Hello, everyone. This is Yoann from Ganister. Welcome to this very first webinar for Ganister. I'll just wait a few more moments so everyone can join. So we'll take just 1 or 2 minutes to wait for others to join. All right, just waiting for others to join. I will share a quick poll. I guess it will. This is the first time we're using this system, which seems pretty nice. The DEM.io. So you will get a poll. I'm not sure how it will appear. I've tested it on a mobile platform, but I haven't used it on the computer. So I just wanted to know where you were in terms of positioning regarding PLM. Are you an end user? Are you doing implementations, or are you just curious about PLM and you don't recognize yourself as being an end user or an implementer? Okay, I see more people coming in. If you're just arrived, I've just pushed a poll so you can answer this quick question about how you position yourself regarding PLM if you're an end user, uh, if you're more part of the implementation industry of the PLM, or if you're just curious about PLM and do not recognize yourself in the other two positions. All right, I think we've waited enough and we have enough people, I believe. All right. Once again, thank you for joining this very first webinar. We exist since officially since August 2020, and this is strangely the first webinar we've done. In the last few months, we've produced a few videos about Ganister. Maybe too many technical videos, not enough end user oriented videos, but we'll have more in the future. So we wanted to get back to the basics and the roots of Ganister and provide this webinar. So once again, I'm Yoann Magon, the co-founder and director at Ganister. We're located in France, in two locations, Paris and Lyon. The agenda of this webinar will be pretty much 20-minute slides, a bit more for the first one. We have a lot to cover. 20 minutes live demo, because the audience might be very diverse. So if I get back to the poll, it says that 8 or 53% are just curious, which is nice. We don't have any end user, which is basically the main reason why we want webinars, to run webinars, is somehow to get end users to watch our system, but that's fine. And 44% are on the implementation side. Well, some people are still voting. So we'll have 20 minutes live demo, and because of the audience, it's not going to be in all the details, but at the end, we can have 10 or more minutes, up to an hour of webinar to answer questions. Once again, this is the first time we use this system. I hope I'll get most of the questions. And oh, I can see someone telling me, I hope everybody can see the screen, because it says on my system that the screen is displayed, and I believe it is. All right, so let's continue. So these few slides, you've seen these, I guess, a million times. What is PLM? What is the life cycle of product data? And we all present the same thing. The data is not only in the engineering department, it's not only for design or pre-manufacturing activities, but it's all across the company, from marketing when you um, think about the product initially, when you imagine it, and until the maintenance of the systems, or maybe the retirement of the system you're producing. We all have the same slides in the PLM industry. The difference is how do you answer technically this concept. And this is why we exist. Many times we get back to the question, what problems are we trying to fix? The main problem is what we see every day at companies is companies have bought PLM systems which were told to be able to cover the whole product lifecycle, but they end up having still these Excel files, these Access databases or other databases, not only because of their own faults, but also because of the business that changes over time. If you change suppliers and sometimes they send different Excel files, different format, you're going to change how you ingest this data and how you support this data with your system. So to fix this problem, the ideal solution that we came up with in a very conceptual way is first we need to get back to the roots of configuration management. This is the main foundation of a system that will manage your product data. So configuration management is the key of the system. Is how do you make sure that you know how to handle relationships between bits of information. On top of this, you want the flexibility of a platform to be able to adapt your system to all the changes that will happen in your companies through the years, but also to progressively implement a system that will maybe start from marketing and then go downstream to the end of the product lifecycle, or the other way around. Some companies will start from maintenance and then will connect bit by bit the different elements of a product lifecycle. And in the end, business rules, you have a system that has to be flexible, but has to do the job that has to be covered by product lifecycle management. So bill of materials, I don't know, change management, etc. All these business rules have to be applied. But this shouldn't be the first thing that a PLM provider should work on. First thing is configuration management, then flexibility and business rules. So we built a complete solution based on the unique data repository. So you can own the data and manage the whole data in one single source of data. On top of this, we built a configuration engine to adapt the system to all your needs, and it is supposed to be very flexible, and that's what we are going to demonstrate in the live demo. We took some of the standard business models, so managing bill of materials. There's not a million ways to do it. There might be a few, but we took basic concepts to manage these business models. And in the end, an adaptive user experience. So when we still want to make sure that users enjoy working with the PLM systems, which is not usually the case. It is one of our main fears when people stop using the PLM, that they save data in other systems. So you may have the best features in your system. If users can't enjoy entering data for this in this PLM, then you're losing them and you're creating this other hidden PLM, which stays in Excel files and other disconnected storage. When we built this stack, we also invested in a few technological decisions, like being cloud native, which means that our PLM solution is ready to be deployed on the cloud, and it was built to be deployed on the cloud. It can still be deployed on premise, but our favorite way of distributing it today is the cloud. We have automated updates. So when you, maybe some of you have tried it already to update your system. Our first customer actually used Ganister before version 1. And we released yesterday the version 2.3, and they went through all the upgrades. And the interesting thing is that these updates are cumulative. So our this customer didn't do all the versions. Sometimes they skip 2-3 versions, but they could run the updates and accumulate these updates, because that's easy to say. You can update to every single version, but when it impacts your business, you don't really you don't always have the time to do these upgrades. We use approved web technologies. We didn't do anything fancy on this. We use mainly web technologies that are used in large websites. And one of our specificities is the graph data storage. This is very specific to Ganister. I believe we're the first PLM solution to be fully relying on a graph database. And I will give some explanation later on what it brings to the PLM customers. And the last one is we are API first. It has multiple consequences. So basically, if you don't know what API first is, we build all our features as services. So this is without thinking about a user interface. We first define services. So when you create a part, when you create a document, we build services for this, and then we put UIs on top of this. The transverse features to support all the business features that you will use in the PLM. We have configuration management, which is the main interesting one for us. Access management. One interesting thing we have in Ganister is that all the access are calculated based on the graph. So that's also one value that we have from the graph database, is that all the accesses will be defined by the graph, which also means that if another system accesses Ganister or even the database directly, they will understand the data. And that's one of our key aspects, is if you take the graph database out of Ganister, you should be able to understand all the data that's in there. Not only the bill of materials, but also who has access to what in the system. And a few months ago, we started having customers sharing some of their information with partners, or sometimes with their own customers. And so it's really interesting to be able to audit the accesses through the graph. A reporting engine. One interesting thing with graph database is that it's very nice to see. It's very nice to see graphs, but many times when you want to analyze some information, you need a table, or you need tables and reports. And so we have had to build our own report engine to convert graph data into tables. And editable documentation, that's one. It's a smaller aspect of our software, but that's something that we wanted, is that every customer will configure, adapt the system for themselves. And we wanted them to be able to also document these changes for themselves. And so through the upgrades, they will still be able to keep their changes, and without having to buy another documentation software. And internationalization, so we can support any language. The one we officially support are French and English for now, but as soon as we will get more international resources in our company, then we may support more languages. But still, if you're German, you can have German implemented and maintain your own language. So on top of these core features, we have the flexible, we say no code, low code model, because you can do already a lot with without writing any code in your system. But still, it's also low code, because as soon as you want something very specific, you're allowed to write some code to adapt it to your needs. So now we'll just review some of the business feature. I will go pretty quickly on these features. I will just name them. The goal is just for you to, if there's something of interest, then you write it down somewhere, and then you ask us for more details. Not all of these features will be in the demo. Some of these features have been developed or configured for customers, but it's nice to see the different features that we can have in Ganister. So first is, of course, design management. We can handle multi-domain BOMs, so we can have multiple BOMs. We have simplified validation workflows. You will see how we manage validations of bill of materials and parts. And we have an interesting adaptive revision granularity, which means that depending on if you have a part or a document, maybe the revision scheme will not be the same. So sometimes you want 3 digits, sometimes you want just 2 digits to manage revisions. We can talk about that later. Change management, because we mentioned configuration management, and change management is really part of it. It helps really maintaining the links between different nodes. And so we have these concepts of engineering change management, so engineering change requests, engineering change orders. And the key aspect of it is that we didn't do it for a part node type. Node type is the type of object that we are dealing with. We didn't do it for parts. We didn't do it for documents. We didn't do it for a factory. We did it for what we call nodes, because we're talking about graph data. And so we did this configuration management for nodes and relationships. So there's nothing hard coded for parts. If you want to do to have a factory change order or a marketing change order, because there are types of information that are only managed by marketing, you can do it with Ganister. There's nothing hard coded on this. Document management, we have some solutions to make it easy to edit documents and share documents. Project management, we have a simple project management UI, which allows you to do quite a lot of things. You can have timelines in your project, you can have Kanban, you can have Gantt charts, etc. If at any point you have questions, you can list these questions in the chat, and I will pick them up, or I can read them at the same time, but at least I will pick them up at the end during questions. Requirement management, we have a simple way to handle requirements. It will be improved in the coming releases, but it's already enough to write requirements and link them to parts or other objects. MRO. So I didn't take the time to present where we were coming from. And our very first customer is actually a defense contractor who does a lot of MRO activities. And so we almost started PLM with Ganister in the MRO sector. And so we have a lot of features for managing maintenance operations in a service BOM. So that's some of these things that for which we had to build a lot of UIs specific to MRO. Sourcing, we also like the electronic industry. So we have some integrations with different web service providers that gives information about the obsolescence of components, and you will see this in the demo. Manufacturing BOM, we're pretty new or pretty young in the manufacturing BOM concepts, but we already have some things in production and we're adding more features these days. Serializing, once again, some of our first features that we had to deliver were about serializing. So creating digital twins of physical assets, but maybe serializing not the complete bill of materials from the engineering, but limiting some of the parts to only what you would support. And it's usually something that has a serial number. So in the end, Ganister today is a good set of features with BOM management, change management, document management, project requirement management, ILS for integrated logistics support, which is equivalent to the MRO, component sourcing, manufacturing BOM, and serializing to have the digital twins. And it is supported by mainly configuration management, which is our key asset at Ganister, supported by the graph database. But also report engine, access management, documentation editing, which we believe is transverse, data model management, and internationalization. Just a few words about graph before we jump into the demo. We believe PLM is a graph. That's our saying at Ganister. When you have you can have a customer which purchase an order, etc. Whenever we work on PLM concepts, and that's not it didn't start with Ganister. I have more than 10 years of experience in PLM. All the time we are drawing graphs on whiteboards. And when we discovered graph databases, and when we saw that it became very industrial, and more large customers were using these, we tested it and we realized that it was a very nice shortcut between the actual drawings that we were drawing on the whiteboard and the actual features that we could implement in Ganister. And there's an interesting, I say interesting because I wrote it, but there's an interesting article that I wrote a while back about why graph databases could be interesting, and on a very specific topic, which was the Cypher query language. So if you have time later to watch this article comparing Cypher language, which is the query language for graph databases, and SQL query language for PLM data, that's pretty relevant. All right, let's jump to the demo. I'll just make sure I'm logged in. I'll log out first. So basically, Ganister is a web application, and so any user has the link and log in the system with their email and their password. We can have two-factor authentication. Our system is that when they will log in the system, they will get an email with a unique code that they have to enter. And basically, when you come in the system, you have a first dashboard with a few elements that guide you through your work. So different assignments, for example, which is either the assignments that you have to do, or potentially the assignments that you gave someone else to execute. The recent items, these are the 12 last items that we've been working on. We can have different graphs to represent some of the data there. And the workflows. So the workflows you will see in Ganister, we mixed the concept of lifecycle and workflow. And so whenever you have to vote on the lifecycle for a lifecycle promotion, you will get this notification here, and you can access directly these nodes. Then you can have on the left, you have different categories. So we have here the typical categories: requirements, design changes, manufacturing, MRO, portfolio. These can be adapted to any company's needs. We or usually we have even less than this. Sometimes you have 2-3 categories. This is completely configurable. And inside this, we have what we call node types. Node types are the types of nodes. So if I click here, parts, I have a grid with all the nodes that are in the system in this demo database. And if I click, for example, documents, I have this. So you see the grids are different depending on how we configure this, and we'll see how we configure the different grids. And you can also see that we can have images in the grids. A lot of things are possible with these grids. If we remove, for example, thumbnails, we can I don't know, group by states. You can have another group if you want to. What could we use here? Type. And you can have even calculations, etc., in the system. So these grids are pretty nice and can be adapted to any user. So when you change a setting here, it's saved for the user. We can also do specific filtering on what's current in terms of data, and filtering on what is released and official. And so once you have found what you look for, you can open, you can open the form. So let's find something like where is this hidden? This one. So when you open a node, the basic concept for any type of node is that you have a toolbar here, which will be filled with different buttons depending on what types of node type you have. And then you have a form, and then you have tabs. This is the basic concept. Then when you configure the solution for your need, then you configure all this, and you can have forms with a lot more fields in there, different tabs also, or the tabs can be displayed depending on different data here. And this doesn't require any programming for this. So here the example for this part. This is a part. You can see there are 3 digits for the revisioning scheme. It's really up to you. You can use, if you are from the mechanical industry, maybe you're more used to just having one letter. We don't use letters for versioning, but one number could be enough for you. But in some other industries, they want 3 digits. So maybe sometimes it's because of change management rules. If they provide a product to another company, maybe the third digit will never be displayed because they made a change, but they don't want their customer to see it. And maybe the second digit will be there's been a change, but you don't have to change your mechanical integration setup. And the first digit will require more changes from the customer. Then you have the lifecycle. So that's where it is quite simple and efficient. It's so here you have states that you can reach where if you have the right access. So depending on the access, you can release, or in this case, for example, I want to go back to draft because there's something that didn't go right. So not okay. Back to draft. and then I can edit this node. You will still have a save and unlock button. You can have more features for managing accesses. You can audit why you have access to a specific node. So here it says I'm joint administrator and I'm part of the group administrator, etc. We have a timeline to see what has changed on the node. And we also have a nice graph exploration tool to see how what is connected to this node. And then you can have more features like actions that you will deploy or create yourselves. And when the pod gets released, then you can, if you want to do changes, you will have to add it to an ECO. If you compare to other objects like a document, you can see a small difference. You can see here you don't have the same tabs. If you see the difference between an assembly and a part, so this would be a part, and you don't have a bill of material. And we will see in the configuration panel how this is different. Let's see. So documents, you will have files, and you can see that you can edit these files. So if I open this, I have a PDF representation. So if I edit the document, I could, when you check in the document, it will create a new version of the PDF representation of this file, so you can share it with others without having them to open the Word document in this case. So here, I think I covered everything on this toolbar. The last few things that we have in the main user interface is, for example, search. We have a search feature which allows you to search across the whole database, and it uses the search features from our graph database. So it's not it's pretty nicely. Well, the performances are pretty nice for this. A few other features. So we talked about how we could connect Ganister to other systems to work on part obsolescence. We have an integration with a service called Z2 Data. And for example, if we go to portfolio, purchasing, supplier refs, and we have set just one example on this, where the system sends a request to Z2 Data and gets the obsolescence information for this particular electronic components. And so here you would have some information from their solution. You can have data sheets, and we have PCN, which is product change notification, which will potentially trigger a change or a purchasing action if, for example, a specific component becomes obsolete, or if there's a change in the location of production and you want to change supplier. So here you would say, for example, you have product change notification coming from the producer. I'll move then to the configuration management panel, where maybe you'll get a better understanding of how this is all configured. So this is only for admin. If I'm not logged as an admin, I would not have access to this. So if I go here, I have gconfig. So gconfig is our whole configuration panel. You can configure the data model. That's the heart of the application. The methods, when you want to go more specific and more close to your actual business needs, and you have to write code, this will be in the method editor. Groups and users will be managed here. List of values, categories is mainly the left panel that you're using. Health report is to make sure that your data is in the right shape. So sometimes you're missing, you're missing some translations, etc., and it will guide you through this. settings when you want to change the look and feel. And sometimes we have had sometimes some very specific requests from users. And what we tend to do is we tend to make configuration points in the application. The most extreme that we had was that the node type here, called part here, it usually it was on the right side before, and we were asked to put it on the left side because we were told that it was easier to read. And I think now we all put it on the left side. But when we had this request, we said, okay, we won't just hard code the change. We will make a configuration point and allow admins to change this. Translation, to manage the translation, API documentation, tech documentation, and credits for open source libraries that we're using. Data model. So this is almost the default data model that you may have when you download our solution. And so you can dive into this graph and click on a node type and configure the whole application. So if we want, for example, for software, let's say that we want to add, I don't know, there is already a type. So code or language, if you want to define which language this software is written with. Do you want to add this? Yes. So before I open these changes, maybe we'll open one to see how it was before. So this is how the software form is. And so if you want to change this, we created a language field, and in the UI, we will say, I want to add a language here. And so if I refresh this page, I will just keep the software and close the others. Now I have the language available, and by default, this is a string, but it could be a list of values. If we say, okay, this is here, the language will be select software languages, just this, and C. I select this language. I make sure that the UI has been is well configured, so it's drop down. And I just I didn't update it in the form here. Let's refresh it. So we separate the different UIs, the grid and the form. So now we have this language here. An interesting feature that we also have in Ganister is that you can edit things directly in the grid if you have the rights to. For this, you just have to or allow it. So if we are in grid columns here and you say this could be edited, you will see. So I guess it's that I need to refresh this up. And it's at the end. You have a specific color here. It's yellow here to say that you can change the value. And because I have nobody else is locking the system, this node, I can edit this value. So this is basic configuration for a node. You can update properties, UI, tabs. You've seen in the parts when I was opening a part that you could have, if this is an assembly, there's going to be bill of material. If this is not an assembly, there's not going to be this tab because it will be automatically empty. And the way we do this is that you have a tab that has been defined, and we just say this only works if the part is not just a part. If it's just a part, then there's no bill of material. But the test could be more, it only exists if this is an assembly. So this is a simple line that you can write here to check the validity of the appearance of a tab. The lifecycle can be configured also here. So you can, there are some states that we want you to keep in the system to make sure that change management works. But apart from this, you can add as many lifecycle steps that you want and assign them to whoever you want in terms of roles. Actions, we've seen with some of our integration that you want we want some specific behaviors. So we have some actions that will trigger code. If the user is not triggering the code, maybe it's going to be the server itself, the application itself, which will trigger this. And we integrate also with the different external APIs, and we are adding more APIs as they come. We have integration with element 14, which is the Farnell catalog. We have GitHub integration, IHS integration, Z2 data integration, etc. So this is basically how we manage this this solution. You can adapt the graph as much as you want. You can create as many relationships as you want. You can create some different packages to really adapt the solution to your exact needs. Just going quickly through the other elements before I go back to the presentation and check your questions. So this is our code editor. One specific thing that I didn't mention about Ganister PLM is that it is all written in JavaScript, and we write everything in JavaScript. So in most other solutions, you have to, if you're writing code for the front end or for the server, you may have two different languages, and it makes things more complicated to get the right person to write the code. With Ganister, it's only JavaScript, so it's easier to find resources to help you write some code. Groups and users, that's where you will manage who is in which group, and you will define the generic permissions for different nodes. List of values, we've seen this. This is where you will create a list. We've seen when I created software links that you could do it directly from the data model to make things easier, but you could create it also from here. And settings, just to show you how a few configuration points that you can have. So as I mentioned, the node type name can be on the left or the right. You can have a pagination for the grids. You can change the logos here. You can enable Google Apps integration. And the last one that I wanted to mention is API documentation. So if you're using Ganister for and you want to integrate it with other systems, we produce a Swagger, which is a documentation for the API. If you're not technical, it's just a documentation for anyone who would like to adapt their software to connect to Ganister. The whole dictionary of services would be available here, and so they know how to communicate with Ganister. So before I answer, I review some of the questions. So what's next for Ganister PLM? So for now, we have to split our work between the first implementation we're working on and the development work. And if you've been following up our releases, now we are in a mode where every month we're releasing at least a minor revision, which contains the latest thing that we've developed, or sometimes it's fixes. And depending on our workload, these minor revisions can have more or less changes. But the key elements that we're working on, so for the end of this semester, is process design. If you have seen also our communication, you see that we not only work with the mechanical or the industrial sector, but we also work with the food industry. And process design can be a bit different than what we're used to. So we're trying to do something quite generic for this. We have an ongoing on-shape integration. We already have a nice demo for this, but we're trying to make it more industrial by the end of the semester. An advanced CAD viewer to also have measurements, etc., to have more feature in our CAD viewer. In the next semester, we will work on manufacturing BOM and more tools to compare a manufacturing BOM and an e-BOM and help industrialization engineer to create their manufacturing BOM from the e-BOM. We work on the SolidWorks integration, and we have actions on system engineering these days. And then we already started to work on this, but it takes a long time, and there's a lot of tests to do depending on the companies we're working with. Options and variant management is seen as a big opportunity for us because of the graph technology we're using. And we believe, and we already have different use cases that we've been able to test. And graph is really helping, not only on the development side, but even when we just talk about options and variants, and we draw a lot of graphs on the whiteboard, and it's so much easier for us to implement these type of features when the use cases are very close to what we draw on the whiteboard. Then if you want to get started on Ganister PLM, there's a few ways to do it. The Ganister PLM is free to download, and you can go on our website, and there's a tech approach where it tells you how to install Ganister on premise. If you want it on the cloud, just to do a few tests, then you can get in touch with us, and we'll deploy an instance on the cloud for you. Or you can just start working on what would be a good use case that you would demonstrate with Ganister, and we can get in touch, or have you work with a partner who is integrating Ganister. Oh, it's a good time for a question. There's just a few questions. The first one was, how object-oriented is Ganister, and can we extend the data model by using multi-inheritance classification, etc.? Today, it's not object-oriented. Really, we have node types defined in the graph. So let me get back here. Up. Here, data model. So we have these node types, and there's no inheritance between different node types. We have these classifications, or we have some features that adapt to different classification, and we're working on this because we had some feedbacks about the versioning scheme. Versioning is defined here, and that's where you define if you have 1, 2, or 3 digits for your revision schema. And sometimes you would have mechanical parts and electrical parts, and they would not have the same schema. And so we are working on having more granularity on how we specialize some of these node types, but by default, it's not object-oriented. And so regarding classification, we have some elements for classification, and we have some behaviors that will adapt to this, but it's not like an object-oriented implementation. Next question is, how do you configure managing alternate parts, material suppliers within Ganister? So I'll try to answer this. So alternate parts is a good question, because there's a specific feature that we've created in Ganister, is, I'm not sure this is actually implemented or this is configured here. Let's open this. Yeah, we don't have the concept of equivalence here. But what we have in a graph database, we have all the relationships have a starting point and an end point. And so it's like there is a parent and a child. And so what we've created a way to not have this concept, or to have the concept of not having a parent and a child. Just say these two are equivalent. And so if we go here in data model and we configure the parts, and we say, maybe we already have the relationship created here. It's called part equivalent. And this relationship is configured as an undirected relationship, which means that if you attach B to A, if you go in B, you will see A attached the same way. And the rights to attach or detach would be the same. And we're not creating two relationships. There's only one relationship, but we're allowing to manage the relationship in both directions. So that's one way we would create it. So if you want to see these, we have tabs here. We say alternates, right? It will be equivalence. And so we have to use a specific tab called undirected relationships. We use this part equivalent, and we say we can just attach existing. So now we have this new tab where you can, if I look this, I can attach others and say, okay, these are, even in this case, they clearly not our alternates, but and in the graph you will have these relationships. So somehow you would have a direction here is equivalent to, but in the interface they will appear, they will not appear as parent and child in the way you attach or detach these things. And for the questions about materials and suppliers, then it really depends how you connect these things. So for suppliers, in this data model, I don't think we have suppliers. We didn't create. So once again, you can, we have a relationship between parts and supplier references. So if you look at the graph, we have this. We just didn't show the tab. So if we add this tab called supplier refs, and let me refresh this, so I'm sure it's taken into account. Parts, tabs, supplier refs, and then the relationship is part supplier refs, and we can create, yeah. And then you can have this relationship between a part, which is what you define internally, and supplier refs that you have created. So maybe if the one we saw earlier, supplier refs, I can open this and move back to its parent here. So now that would be the relationship between a part and a supplier ref, and we could display the supplier directly here also. And next question, does it support dynamic cascading pick list? So I would believe this is dynamic cascading pick. If this is a list with a hierarchy, this is something that we're working on, mainly for classification. And in the options and variants, we had this use case also, so it's not available yet, but we're working on this. Hopefully I answered the question correctly. And maybe the last question, how is ownership handled on those undirected relationship? Who is responsible for modifying those? That's so we made these relationship pretty free in terms of who can manage this relationship. So if A is, in our case, an alternate to B, then they can update this relationship. The owner of A can update this relationship, but also the owner of B. Even though in the graph there is a direction, we open the permission for editing in both directions. So that's the change that we had to do on the normal relationship concept in Ganister. All right, I don't see more questions for now. If you have more questions, you can write me an email directly, or you can write to contact@ganister.eu. Mine would be Yoann@ganister.eu. Yoann is Yoann. Even for the French, there's no H in my first name, please. And there is, for the French speaking people, there's webinar in 2 weeks, and it's going to be pretty much the same. But if you have friends who wants to see pretty much the same webinar in French, it's going to be in 2 weeks. And we will try to have more webinars like this, maybe more focused on a specific topic. And if you have any suggestions, please send us an email. The recording will be available pretty soon. I'm not sure. Maybe you will get an email for this. I'm not sure. I know that I know where it is in the system, and in a few, if tomorrow you didn't get an email, then I can send the recording to the list of attendees. Thank you very much. Have a nice day if you're not on this side of the Atlantic, and have a nice evening for the Europeans. Thank you. Bye.